Hey everybody, I'm Will Martin. You know, the joy of doing something like creating a YouTube channel is that, you get to kind of produce your own content and go whatever direction you want to go in within reason. And no matter what direction that is, there's probably going to be somebody that is going to benefit or at least reflect on what you have to say. So in these next few videos, I'm going to be focusing on mental health, our mental health as healthcare providers and future healthcare providers. And in doing so, I want to give you a perspective of where I came from in this whole idea of mental health. So I'm going to talk about my experiences in the fire department and EMS back in the day. Honestly, it's hard for me to get into this, and certainly not because I don't believe in mental health. I believe it's important. But I always consider the topic of mental health as something that you just didn't get into. You just didn't focus on it. I know that sounds odd, it sounds harsh by today's standards, I know, but I want to explain where I'm coming from. So, as a lot of you know who have watched any videos of mine, you know that I'm older than probably the average person that watches these videos. I come from a different generation. I was taught by an even older generation. And in a nutshell, what we were taught by that older generation was that you dealt with issues, you sucked it up. If you saw a bunch of bad stuff, a lot of tragedy, you sucked it up. You didn't say anything. Anything other than that was considered back in those days a sign of weakness, period. And we were taught not to go around whining or feeling sorry for yourself about a bad shift or a bad experience or horrific trauma. I mean, back in those days, and I'm talking in my case back in the 1980s, 1990s, if you saw something horrific, you sucked it up and you moved on. So many people today would probably think that most of us, would be all kinds of screwed up in the head. We'd be suicidal wife beaters or alcoholics. But actually, I haven't seen that to be the case amongst people that I know. And it's always been super rare to actually know someone who had any sort of real issues regarding life on the job in EMS or a firefighter. Now, why is that? I don't know for sure. But here's one observation that I'll offer. I recall a bad incident back in the late 80s. It was, I think, a car wreck, middle of the night. Our shift supervisor decided that we should take a break after that call and go home for the rest of the shift. That was fine with me. So my partner and I went back to the station. We cleaned our rig. We clocked out. And then we went to breakfast at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And we were sitting there. We ate our breakfast. We didn't talk about what we had just seen. We talked about other stuff, but we didn't talk about that. We went home, we slept, and we came back to work that night, and not a word was said. It was just something that you didn't dwell on. And all the other hundreds of quote-unquote bad calls that we went on, we never really spoke about them very much. And we were fine, really. We didn't become drinkers or addicts or, I don't know, crybabies or whatever. We didn't try to swallow the barrel of the gun, so to speak. It just didn't happen. That was a different time back then. On nights off, it was really common for a lot of us to get together, hang out at a bar, shoot darts, play pool, and talk, but we never really talked about the job. I mean, hardly ever did we talk about it. And to this day, how cool that was is the way I look back on it. To be surrounded by, a bunch of people that you worked with, who knew what you knew, did what you did, and there was really no need to talk about, what you saw. I mean, to me, that was, I think, therapy. And I guess I remember how uncomfortable I would feel when I, went outside that group, went to a party or to a wedding or wherever, being surrounded by people who weren't firemen or paramedics. Some of them would want to talk about, hey, what was the worst thing you ever saw? And I never really answered that question because they wouldn't understand it anyway. But also because they're expecting me to talk about, some shooting or stabbing or car crash when really the worst thing that I would see was, things like, babies sleeping in dresser drawers or sleeping on a mattress in the middle of a floor with cockroaches crawling over them. I mean, not uncommon things. And I suspect that's not what anybody really wanted to hear. So I hated to go to parties or gatherings with, I guess what I would call regular people. I had zero in common with them. But then things started to change. Attitudes started to change. By the early 90s, I had left my full-time job as a paramedic at that point. I was working as an RN, but I continued to do part-time EMS work, and I was really heavily involved in my local volunteer fire department and our helicopter service. So I was still going on a lot of calls, still seeing a lot of things. So, like I said, things were starting to change at that point. Somewhere around the mid 90s, out of nowhere, it seemed, fire departments and EMS agencies were adopting something called critical incident stress debriefing. It was something that would occur after a major call, like a mass casualty incident or something otherwise noteworthy. And it was intended for those who were involved in the incident to meet and, I guess, I don't know, talk about their feelings or something. I suppose that there were counselors there. I couldn't really tell you because, to be honest, I never went to one. They eventually were almost making it mandatory to go to these things, but I just couldn't bring myself to go and sit in a room and hear other people talk about their feelings. Very strange, looking back on it, and in a way I kind of still feel that way. But I believe that we all have our own way of coping or dealing with stress, and maybe I'm just among a group of lucky people that never really had issues with job-related stress. I wonder if we had a better way of handling it. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Because many of you are younger than me, you were brought up with the idea that, you were encouraged to express your feelings, and you probably think that the old way of stress management was pretty odd, maybe even cruel or dangerous. I don't know, but it's really a great question. No real way to study it, that's for sure. I mean, you certainly can't have a control group that's just told to, hey, go suck it up and be quiet about it, and the other group, told to go get some counseling. I guess we'll never really know which way is better. But in the end, I think that the way that we handled things, it worked. It worked for us. I don't know. It's very odd stuff. So in the next few videos, I'm going to share a few stories from other healthcare providers and what they're doing or what they did to manage stress and whether they're winning or losing at the attempt. And I think that there's room for all of us to kind of take a look at how we each manage stress and whether we think it's healthy or not, and maybe share some of our own thoughts or strategies with one another. So please feel free to share your experiences and your thoughts on stress management in the comment section below. And also, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving the video a like. And we'll talk again on the next video. Thanks. Bye.